So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shauna Taroso. I'm the CEO with the Realtors Association of York and Adams Counties. I am so thrilled that we have a guest with us today, Mr. Brian Donnellan. He is the CEO with Bright MLS, and he has kindly agreed to share part of his afternoon with us to do our virtual fireside chat on all the exciting things that are happening at Bright MLS. So welcome, Brian. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sean, it's a pleasure to be here, and I mean that. And thanks for inviting me, including me. I look forward to this.
Wonderful. So for those of you on the line, you will have the opportunity to ask Brian any questions that you may have. Our preferred method is if you type those questions in the chat feature, but if you have something that you can't get across in chat and you prefer to ask it in person, we can unmute your microphone and allow you to ask that question that way. But let's get things kicked off. So Brian, I want to talk a little bit about 2023 and what your vision and look ahead is for Bright MLS. So there's been a lot of changes in the real estate industry. Brokerages have become portals. Portals are being sold. Companies are exiting the industry. So what's your sense of where things stand now in the industry and what could be in store for our future?
So, I mean, that's a really, really big question. And, I'll start with this. We've all talked about change. And we talk about it here all the time. And even the very nature of change is actually changing now. Where there used to be like finite periods where you could see where something began and something ended. We're at a time where things are changing before you get to those end things. So we're really looking at what we do in a different way than we ever had. And in this industry, you would think more change would have happened already. I mean, there's a ton of money pouring in here, but I think because of the nature of the business, it makes it a little bit harder. But I would suggest to you that I think we'll begin seeing some larger, bigger changes in the coming years. Maybe not be this year, may start this year, but in the coming years, I see these things actually being put in place, technology being put in place to do that. The other thing about our industry that it's just so used to doing is there's a lot of great ideas, but people are really developing solutions looking for a problem still. You know what I mean? So they develop this thing and then they look for a way to insert it into the market as opposed to taking a real look to see what people need out there. Ultimately the consumer is telling us what it is that they need. You, the brokers and agents, and then through you guys to the MLS. There are certain things that they're looking for. I mean, still, if you look at the data, this is still one of the most, they fear this, whether they're buying or selling, they're so apprehensive about doing it. And the data also shows just how important brokers and agents are to what it is that they do. There's Wall Street money, there's SPACs. We're in a market that's somewhere between really good and really bad, depending upon where you are, so the gamut's out there. So predicting where we're going is going to be a difficult thing, but I do believe that we're in a really good spot, I think, to affect some change over the next year and a year and a half, 18 months to come.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about Bright's priorities. And so you walk me through at a higher level what those priorities are, and maybe we can drill down a little bit deeper on a couple of different things. Yeah,
and we recently went through a strategic plan that I think finished last fall, and it probably needs to be updated already. And you guys, it's just the nature of where it goes. I would have to say top on our priority list is listing management. I think we'll talk about these in a minute. Another one is property centricity. And again, these are all things that we are going to look at coming forward here, but these are pillars that we're looking at. Web 3.0 is an important one to consider with where not necessarily today, but where the world's going to be. And then another area, premium products for us, for Bright and for you. When Bright was put together, the charter was to actually do the best basic service for a reasonable price and strip out all the things that not everybody uses. and put things in there that brokers and agents could buy if they wanted to, but it had nothing to do with the basic service. I think those are our and expansion. So those sort of 5 areas are areas that we're really focused on right now. If you want to talk a little about each of those, we certainly can.
Yeah, why don't we talk a little bit about listing management? So I know something that many of our agents are excited about is the capability to send a preview of the listing to their clients before it goes live. So can you give us any details about that launch and what that feature may look like for us?
Yeah, and again, we're always balancing the line between what is good and what's bad, right? You know, the idea that we don't want to start a pre-marketing of a listing. So, you know, we really thought that this would be good, that a broker and agent could share with a limited party, a number of folks involved, you know, what a listing was before we put it out there. But just back to listing management overall, you know, as a multiple listing service, we focus in those areas that have high network value, meaning the more that somebody uses it, the better it is. Having a listing in the MLS is one of those things. If you guys remember, Remind had a product, and you know, there are certain things that you could search by zip code. That's not a high network value thing, because if you have, you know, 1,000 people sending one person who potentially could be selling a house, that has so we focus on the areas that have high network value, and having the best marketplace, having a transparent marketplace, having a marketplace of listings where every broker and agent can go to, and they know that they're all there, and they're not actually wondering if they don't have anything. And quite honestly, you know, we've got to look it through the eyes of the consumers too. If we lost the listing, then I think as an MLS, we sort of lost our future out there, because we're not able to provide that transparent marketplace to everybody. So we spent a lot of time working on the listing. The listing preview is one thing. We're working on the media to make that better and faster, and put more tools in there. But the whole idea behind it is that the broker and agent have to do less. That a lot of that stuff is pre-populated for you, and that stuff isn't easy to get to. It gets through some public records, many of which are not always right. It gets through some other AI that we use in order to fill that. But at the end of the day, it allows the broker, the agent, to make the decision, you know, in terms of what it is they're doing and how it is they're going to do it. We just want to make it easier and faster so they can do. And as I said, you know, the media is a big area too. You know, it was taking far too long. You know, we look at these things when we're doing them, we just don't want them to look a little bit better. The whole idea behind listing management was to do as fast as we can. We cut about 30% of the time out on the listing part and far more on the media side. But at the end of the day, if the listing's no good, it's the accuracy of that listing that makes the most that provides. So those are the 2 angles, but listing management is key to what it is that we do in our future moving forward.
Okay. And you also indicated that expansion of your geographic footprint is one of your top level priorities. So could you just give us a background of what areas Bright currently covers? And I know we just onboarded the State College area, and do we have anybody else in the pipeline who will be joining us?
The answer, well, let's go back to where we are. We're in about half of Pennsylvania, but I think we have well more than 60% of the listings that are in Pennsylvania. So don't correct me on that. We're in New Jersey, and that's a small part of New Jersey. We are in Delaware, we are in DC, we are in Maryland, we are in West Virginia, and we are in Virginia. I would say to you, we would go anywhere, but we're actually focusing in areas that make the most sense. Pennsylvania is clearly the most sense. Shauna, this is still a very hard and political topic, talking to people about it. You know, people have a lot of energy around it, and then they actually go nowhere. There's still the same old things that are coming up as to why. But I will tell you, Center County actually was a good thing. As soon as we announced that and people saw that we've gotten better at what it is that we do, we've received a lot of more calls from folks in the Pennsylvania area. So it is a priority. It is a priority that takes a lot of time and yields very little. So we stay with it. We're looking at data shares with a variety of different people. Again, if we can share the data and folks can see that the world hasn't changed, then maybe they'll engage us a little bit more, to do a little bit more, to be a little bit more closely aligned. So we're active out there we're active in Pennsylvania, we're active in New Jersey, we're active in Virginia, we're active in a couple other places, but quite honestly, I want to spend our time working in areas where it matters the most for our brokers and agents.
That makes perfect sense. All right, so I know one of the things that I was very excited about is when Bright hired your chief economist, Dr.
Yeah.
Lisa Prevent. I think she's fantastic. I love seeing those reports. I think they're so helpful to our membership. So can you give us a sense where you think the market currently stands and where do you think we're headed here in 2023?
You guys would be crazy if you're listening to me and not her. Although I do talk with Lisa all the time. And, I grew up in the finance world. I grew up in the capital and equities and things like that. And the first thing that I recognized was that, the more you know, the less actually or the more there is to question or know. And I would suggest to you right now that there is so many different things going on. Like I heard on the drive in this morning, I have an hour, so I listened to a lot of different news, mostly on the financial side. Are we going to go into? I heard in two different segments that the equity market is ready to blow up, and I also heard that people are saying, that it's ready to take off. So if anybody tells you they know where this is going, I think you ought to question it. But there are lots of signs out there that it's going to be okay. And I think if we continue to measure against 2021, then I think everybody's going to come up with some missed opportunities or thoughts. I think heading back to a normal market. I mean, when you have a market that hot, you should expect things to dip off a little bit. I actually think that it's possible that that rate shock, maybe people are beginning to get a little more comfortable with that maybe they're okay with the 6% rate. I know it's not perfect. I'm just saying to you that I think we might be able to see more activity in a normal rate situation where most people are thinking that they're outrageous. So there's a lot of statistics within our thing. And going back to Lisa, I think we've just scratched the surface for what it is that she's going to be able to do. She actually just hired somebody to support her. If you can think about it, Shauna, you've probably called her and asked her to come or do something special. So have every 42 other of our shareholder associations and brokers. And my fear is that she gets burnt out. So we're going to give her more resources to do it. But there are so many different things that folks are asking her to do, broker reports. But the one thing that I would say to you guys is that we still have the home demand index that I think people forget about a little bit. It is the only forward-looking index that the nation has and works by zip code. Please don't miss that. When it first came out, I think it lost a little light because everything was just red. It came out in a super hot market and nobody cared because, how much further could the dial go one way? But now that I think we're in these areas, I think they're super important when you're either pricing a house or trying to price a house. And it's good intel that nobody else has. If you're using Case-Shiller, if you're using anybody else, you're at least 30 days or maybe even 6 months old. So I look this area, the housing market, to work better with you, our associations, about what it is that you need and what your folks need to look at so that you can deliver what it is. And that's our partnership. Bright can put out stuff like that, but I think this is for, your association to help with its membership, because you guys actually are the communication wing for those things. So I look for big things in this area over the next 6 months to a year.
Wonderful. I look forward to that.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Nestfully. And we saw that announcement. Can you tell us more about it? How this is going to benefit our membership, and when is the scheduled launch?
So let's start with the scheduled launch. The scheduled launch was supposed to be like in a week or two. And I think this is one of those things that, since it's going to go to the consumer, and not that we wouldn't for the professional either, that we're just making doubly sure that it's working right. And I think we found some things that we weren't happy with. So it's going to be delayed about 5 weeks. So we're probably looking middle to the 21st, third week of March for a release on this. But just to step back for a second, when Bright came together, one of the pillars that we were going to do was to have a better public portal, and I think some of the smaller markets were looking for that. So we had Bright MLS. We had a lot of other priorities going on, and when the CoStar thing happened, let's not forget, CoStar. I don't know if everybody heard, but the CoStar Realtor thing broke down. But I think that just means that they're going to look elsewhere. They're not stopping. So we need to be in this market. Maybe we got a little bit of a window to be in this market, but back about a year and a half ago when CoStar bought HomeSnap, I asked the team, tell me, if we do anything to our Bright MLS, can we actually improve what it is that we did? So we spent about a year doing that. And guess what? We found that we came pretty close to what HomeSnap was doing just by tweaking some things behind the scenes, SEO and some content and some other things on there. So we also recognize that if we do it by ourselves, Bright MLS, while it's a pretty big market, it's not going to get what you need. You need more mass in order to do that. So we have a couple partnerships with California Regional MLS, one of the largest MLSs in the country, and a few others to see if they wanted to do it. And the whole impetus behind this was like, look, this is about brokers and agents. This is not about Bright or CMLS. We found a new name. We have a new mission. We are working with the Broker Public Portal. Our desire is to go and hit all the football cities so that we can really get a good representation, because the more people that are going there, the better we'll do on the Google rankings and other things, which is better for you guys. I'll tell you this, we got a couple other things, joint ventures that are going on that are there to get brokers dollars back to them. But if we think some of those are big, we just do some math. And look, I recognize that this is a very loose equation, but there's about $6.5 billion worth of leads being bought in the Bright footprint, and let's say that's half wrong. That's 3 billion. And let's say we even get into just a little bit of that. That's 1 billion. I think it's real money. I think it's worthwhile. And I think we're going to see that we're going to have some traction pretty quick. We've got some really smart people working on it. And again, the whole focus of this is to get leads to the brokers and let the brokers figure out how they're going to move those leads within their systems to the agents or whomever. So we're pretty excited about it. We're pretty excited that we're actually a little bit behind, but quite honestly, I don't know that anybody that has gotten a couple of major initiatives out in less than a year. And I think we're going to do 2 in that same time frame. And I'm pretty excited about that.
So I did get a question on a basic level. Could you explain to the members what Nestfully is if they haven't heard about it before?
So Nestfully is, if anybody's been to Bright MLS Homes, it really is a public portal. And we just renamed it Nestfully, and we spent money to rename it Nestfully. And you guys will probably laugh at this, but it scored really, really high with the millennials and folks that were slightly older than that. And, that's who we're actually trying to go after to make sure we can build something around. We're not forgetting everybody else, but we wanted to make sure it had a name that fits. So it's a public website. It's a website. Our desire is to get consumers to that and pass them off to you as quickly as possible. So we have to be sticky. We have to have a high ability to grab them, but our desire is to move them to you guys as quickly as we can.
Great, thank you for that. And so what else can we look forward to in terms of the product roadmap for Bright this year?
So one of the things, and this sort of goes with Nestfully, and it's a question that everybody's asked, and it's sort of our mobile app. And I know we're probably going to touch on this a little bit later, but we've always had HomeSnap as our mobile app, and that world has changed. But we're going to introduce a mobile app that's going to go with Nestfully. So that's probably several months away when we'll have a fully functioning mobile app. But the way we're going to do it is we're not going to wait till the whole thing's done. We're going to work a lot more in sort of beta movements, in the sense that we put something out, we'll put real functionality out, and then we'll see how people use it, and we'll continue building upon that, as opposed to take the years to drop something new. That'll work for the agent. Ultimately, it'll probably be the replacement for HomeSnap, although we'll leave that in the market. The beauty of this mobile app and mobile experience is that it'll work with Matrix and it'll work with everything else in there, so that your contacts will flow through your all the other, safe searches and all this. We won't have to be flipping from one thing to the other. The roadmap is a pretty complicated thing because it's changing. Market's changing, and we're staying on top of a lot of different things. But the roadmap includes a lot of one of the things that we didn't talk about earlier that's really, really important is product centricity, that we're going to move to more of a product centric area. Because if you guys think about it, a listing is what the mere moment in a property, and we're trying to build as much data as we possibly can around the property. So we'll be moving that way. Let's see, what else do we have on the subscriber, our productivity in terms of what folks are doing, both in terms of teams and other things, broker productivity. We actually have launched Teams and Teams Pro. I think we've talked about this a minute ago. We've launched Listing Preview, which we continue to improve upon because we really do have a good feedback loop out there, and folks out there have really good ideas for what we're going to use. Listing Assistant improvements, we're going to keep improving, how much you actually have to do. And we're actually going to insert more data, whether it be green data, whether it be other data in your area that'll help actually describe your property. What we're trying to do is do things quick. With our product roadmap, what we're trying to do is fail quick, that if it's no good, we move and we go on to something else. And the other thing we're trying to do is what they call back in the product areas. We're stacking these things. So everything sort of builds on top of what it is you've done in the past. Another big area that's coming on the roadmap and halfway through this year is Matrix. And finally, they're going to have Matrix is going to be ready for mobile. Now, it's not going to be an app, but it will be a superior mobile experience to what it is right now. So you're not taking that big screen and trying to turn it sideways so you can see the whole thing. They spent 3 years developing this. That'll come out later this summer. It's under heavy testing right now. We'll put it out in beta. And of course, we'll be working on, I keep talking about data, but there's so many different types of data out there that we're going to try to find everything we can to put it in front of you so that you can create a better listing. So we're focused on building on what it is that we have, expanding out more areas that we have. We're looking in the Matrix, which is going to be a big deal when that gets out there. And our mobile experience will be a pretty huge lift as well, too. And I think folks will be happy with that.
That is good to hear. And so you talked about this, just touched on it briefly, but I know we have a lot of members who utilize the HomeSnap app.
Yep.
So what's the current relationship? What's the status? How long will it be available to our members?
So right now we've got it through the end of March. We are working, and I think we're really close to getting it to the end of the year. My caveat on this, folks, is it's not HomeSnap anymore. Let's be clear, it's CoStar. And we know that CoStar actually wants to go into a different direction. They've already reduced the size of the team that's working on HomeSnap. We'll see the functionality eventually just sort of, wane. We'll see their support go down. So, it'll be there. It'll be there, but it's not their top priority. And that's we're working as fast as we can to have a new mobile alternative for you out there. I'll tell you the new mobile alternative, as I said, integrates with Matrix, so that I think that's a really big plus that we will be working through one experience. And then when it becomes part of Nestfully too, it'll be the same sort of interaction that you have with your buyer, your seller, that you do in HomeSnap. So Shauna, it'll be there. And we'll be working on communications to alert folks to the new one when it comes out and when it's ready. I just highly recommend that you keep your eyes open and make sure that we are not dealing with HomeSnap anymore. We're really dealing with CoStar, and we'll keep them in the marketplace as long as it makes sense.
Okay. So I know one of the questions I often get called about are compliance issues with MLS. And I think probably the top 3 compliance issues that Bright MLS has are probably the same that RAYAC had when we owned and operated our own MLS system. Missing pictures, not updating the status changes in the time frame required, and maybe some comments that aren't appropriate for the listing.
Yes.
So I guess, what is Bright's philosophy on dealing with compliance issues, and will we see any changes in the future over how we're addressing these issues, and maybe finally figuring out a way to make them stop happening as much?
Right. So a lot. So, the reason why there are so many, there's you can go 2 ways here. You can lock down the listing to such an extent that there's no leeway in anything that it is that you do. So there's no possibility to create many of the compliance issues that we have, or you could leave it open and then you have these compliance issues. And we've been on more the leave it open side, that folks want to be able to do things that they want to do. It's an area that takes a lot of resources we probably have a staff of 12 that are devoted to following up on compliance issues. And you're right, they're the same ones that they've been going on forever now. So the question is can we technically find a way to do this? Now, we have some photo recognition stuff that we're testing right now that'll help with photos, somebody getting a photo with a person in there, or some other things that we can flag. So we're looking to do that. Ultimately, having said that, ultimately, no matter what technology you have, somebody's going to look to make sure that it's right. I mean, so we're going to be able to do it faster. We're working on some other chat GBT or whatever that damn thing is called to help us look through some of the comments. So I think what we're trying to do is actually help our folks who are doing this do this faster, so that we can deal with these things in a more timely situation. So we've got another data scientist who's also trying to help us. They get in here and they looked at that. When you use these folks, you don't say, hey, go solve this. You told them to look at some of the things, and then they start digging in and they find things that we would never think of that would actually help us either develop it better on the product side, or find a tool on the other side that'll help us identify those before they hit publish or whatever, or send out a notification that you have change your status. So we're spending a lot of time trying to figure out how we can be better at it and try to solve it from the beginning. And when we can't, actually find a more automated way to help the broker and agent to fix those.
Okay, great. Again, if anybody has any questions, please type it in the chat feature, because we're about to get end of our time here, but I want to make sure if anybody has a question out there that we address it. So one of my final questions, Brian, is what are you most excited about in 2023?
I think we're in a far different spot than we have been in the past, and I'm proud of with the team that's done that. And we made a choice not too long ago of finding people who were outside this industry. I really got frustrated with people trying to solve things the same way that they've always done. We're in 21 states now, Bright is, in terms of employees, so that we're competing with everybody. And I think we're getting some of the best and the brightest minds to help us. I think what I'm most excited about is, so folks have actually really gotten a good handle on what it is that folks that have come from either fintech or other areas have really gotten a good handle for what we're doing. And I don't think I've got to stand over them anymore and say, hey, have you looked at this? Have you looked at this? Have you thought of these things? They're actually starting to come up with these things on their own. So I'm most excited about them bringing new thoughts that I think will actually be helpful to what it is we're doing, as opposed to solving an old problem that we've been meaning to deal with. So, when there's this much chaos, and there's this much chaos out there with CoStar and the portals out there and some other folks, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us as well to find some things that'll help our brokers and agents actually define their new way of doing business in this crazy world. So I think 23 and 24 are really, I think 22 was a a turning point for Bright, but I think 23 and 24 are going to be areas that we'll look back and say, okay, we're really beginning to accelerate what it is that we do, and solving problems, just not being fancy or anything, but actually solving problems.
Okay. Got a couple questions here. So can you expand a little bit on what Showing Hub is?
Yeah. So when Zillow bought Showing Time, as well as some other things out there, there's a lot of people who say they want MLS of choice, meaning that they can use whatever tool they want. The problem with all these things are they don't connect with each other. None of them connect. So if you wanted to move from, let's say, a Black Knight to Matrix, you'll never have front end of choice unless it's easy for you to do, because that idea of moving all your contacts over to the other thing, to me, it just keeps anybody from really moving to another thing and testing it out and see if they actually like it or not. The same thing with the Showing Hub. If we're stuck with one showing vendor, then we're always going to be at the mercy of what it is that they have or they don't have. So the Showing Hub was our first attempt at creating a hub which our vendors come to. And our vendors have to agree to share certain amount of information, whether that be safe searches or contacts or whatever it is that we've decided that they've had to do. So we're working on several showing services, Showing Time being one, that are agreeing to actually go by these rules. So that if you decide you want to stay with Showing Time, great. If you decided that you want to use HomeSnap or whatever they call it in the future, that's great. If you want to use some of these other lockbox vendors that are coming out with, that's great. But you'll be comfortable knowing that they'll all work together, that you don't have to pick. And quite honestly, you guys, it makes these vendors actually work for everybody that's using it. Right now, with us, they'll sign 100,000, subscriber thing. We pay them, and they don't work that hard. We want to see them work a little bit hard for their business by making a little competition in the market. So the Showing Hub is our first attempt of putting several showing systems in that all work together. You pick which one it is you want to use or don't use. And it works seamlessly with the rest of them.
Okay. Another question that came into me was, what is the current number of subscribers of Bright? And are you projecting if that number is going to go up or down this year?
Back in the predicting business. Hey, you know what? The number of subscribers, I'm going to give you an about, okay? Because it changes every day. We're about 105,000, maybe somewhere between 103 and 105,000, right? We're probably a couple hundred off where we left last year, at the end of the year. And let's not forget, we have a natural progression where, we build throughout the first half of the year. And then around, November and December, certainly people start dropping off in fairly good form. But, we're actually pretty flat from where we ended last year. We're actually slightly above where we budgeted to be, but we're talking, less than 100 in terms of the delta and all those things. We've spent a lot of time looking at the rest of the market and some other things in terms of how we go down to how many sides are happening. We go down to the projected number of transactions that are happening. We have actually Lisa help us to do some regression analysis on all these things. So it's still guesswork. We actually did a slight reduction throughout this year, but I could see where it's more than a slight reduction or there's no change at all. So we're scalable, so we'll manage our budget to how this works. But I want to do as much as we can while the numbers are where we are by investing in what it is that we do.
All right. Any other questions for Brian before he leaves us today that are coming in? I don't see anything coming through, but Brian, I guess I would just say, what is just your one final thought that you'd like to leave everybody with today about Bright MLS and about its future?
Well, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that the MLS is a viable business, And I actually do think it is. There's a lot of folks trying to poke holes at it right now, but I believe in the broker model. I believe that brokers and agents serve their consumer really well. And I think the MLS serves as a leveling of the playing field, making sure that everybody's playing by the same rules and the consumer can be confident in what everybody's doing. So we're in this thing for the long haul. We're in this thing to serve our brokers and agents first. We're here. I mean, we have, I think, a lot of folks out there in the marketplace. If there's any questions, they can ask you, they can ask me, they can ask whomever. We're going to do our best to answer and respond to what it is we're being asked to do.
Awesome. Well, I didn't see any more questions, so I think that's it. I hope you didn't spend too much time on the hot seat with us today.
No, I think listen, I actually do enjoy this. I do enjoy the questions. And look, I think we are better together. And I think we all need to know where it is we're going and from each person's vantage point. So I welcome and I appreciate the opportunities to have a discussion with you guys.
Absolutely. And I've always appreciated Brian and everybody at Bright MLS, their willingness to listen to the associations, to our feedback, to take that to heart and to make the changes where necessary to make us both better organizations together. So I appreciate it very much, Brian.
Thank you, Shauna. I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you have a successful rest of the day and a wonderful 2023. Thanks so much.